Welcome to our video about the 7 creepiest hitchhiking stories from Reddit. Hitchhiking can be a great way to see the world and meet new people, but it can also be a dangerous endeavor. From unexpected detours to terrifying strangers, these 7 stories will make you think twice before picking up a hitchhiker or hitting the road yourself. So sit back, grab some popcorn, and get ready for some spine-tingling tales. Hey Reddit, I wanted to share a hitchhiking experience that happened to me a few years ago. I was driving my red Toyota Corolla through the countryside of New England when I saw a woman hitchhiking on the side of the road. She seemed friendly and in need of help, so I decided to stop and give her a ride. As we were driving, the woman started acting strangely. She kept adjusting her backpack and seemed nervous. Suddenly, she pulled out a gun and demanded that I hand over my wallet and phone. I was terrified and didn't know what to do, so I gave her everything she asked for. She then ordered me to pull over and get out of the car. I was left stranded on the side of the road as she drove away with my belongings. I reported the robbery to the police, but they were never able to find the woman. My car was eventually recovered, but my belongings were gone. The experience left me shaken and traumatized. I learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of trusting strangers, even if they seem friendly and in need of help. So please, be careful out there and trust your instincts. It's better to be safe than sorry. Thanks for listening. Jake, Story 2. Hi everyone. I wanted to share a hitchhiking experience I had a few years ago. I was driving my old pickup truck through the desert of Arizona when I saw a man hitchhiking on the side of the road. He looked to be in his late 30s, with long, greasy hair and a scruffy beard. Despite his unkempt appearance, I felt sorry for him and decided to stop and offer him a ride. As he climbed into the passenger seat, I noticed a strong odor emanating from him. I rolled down the window to let in some fresh air, but the stench persisted. He introduced himself as Alex and told me he was heading to California for a new job. I tried to make small talk to ease the tension, but Alex's monotone voice made me feel uneasy. As we drove further into the desert, he kept staring at me with a blank expression. I started to feel a sense of dread and wished I had never picked him up. Suddenly, Alex grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back. I screamed in pain as he pulled out a knife and held it to my throat. "Give me all your money and your car keys now," he snarled. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I slowly handed over my wallet and keys, hoping that Alex wouldn't hurt me. "Get out of the car and start walking," Alex ordered. I did as I was told, feeling a sense of helplessness and despair. As Alex drove away, I was left stranded in the middle of the desert with no phone or water. I walked for hours until I finally stumbled upon a gas station. I called the police and reported the robbery, but Alex was never caught. The experience left me traumatized and wary of hitchhiking. I hope my story serves as a warning to others to be cautious and always trust your instincts. Thanks for listening. Emma, Story 3. I wanted to share a story about a hitchhiking experience I had a few years ago. I was driving home from college for the summer when I saw a man hitchhiking on the side of the road. He was an older man with a gray beard and ragged clothes, carrying a beat-up suitcase. Despite my better judgment, I felt sorry for him and decided to give him a ride. As he climbed into the passenger seat, I noticed a strong smell of alcohol on his breath. He introduced himself as Hank and told me he was trying to get to his sister's house in the next town over. I tried to make small talk to pass the time, but Hank kept interrupting me and slurring his words. I was starting to feel uncomfortable and wished I hadn't offered him a ride. As we drove further down the road, Hank suddenly started mumbling to himself and swerving the car. I panicked and tried to pull over to the side of the road, but Hank grabbed the steering wheel and veered the car into a ditch. I was shaken but thankfully unharmed. Hank stumbled out of the car and started running down the road, shouting incoherently. I was left stranded in the middle of nowhere with a wrecked car and no phone signal. I eventually found a gas station and called for help, but the experience left me traumatized and wary of picking up hitchhikers. It's important to always trust your instincts and put your safety first. Story 4. Hey everyone, I wanted to share a story about the time I picked up a hitchhiker while driving through the countryside. It was a beautiful day and I was enjoying the scenic drive when I saw a young woman on the side of the road with her thumb out. She was wearing a sundress and sandals and had a backpack slung over her shoulder. I pulled over and she hopped in the car, thanking me profusely for stopping. She introduced herself as Lily and said she was trying to get to a nearby town to visit her sister. We chatted about the weather and the scenery for a while, and she seemed friendly and harmless. But as we approached the town, I noticed that Lily had become quiet and was staring out the window. Suddenly, she turned to me and said in a low voice, "Can you take me somewhere else instead? I don't want to go to my sister's house anymore." I was taken aback but agreed to drive her to the next town over. As we drove, Lily grew increasingly agitated and kept glancing over her shoulder. I started to feel uneasy and wondered if I should ask her to get out of the car. Just then, a police car pulled us over. The officer asked to see my license and registration, and then turned to Lily and asked for her ID. It turned out that Lily had been reported missing by her family, and the police had been searching for her for days. She had run away from home and was trying to disappear. I was shocked and grateful that I had picked her up, but also scared of what could have happened if the police hadn't stopped us. It was a reminder that sometimes our good intentions can put us in danger, and that we need to be cautious when picking up strangers on the road. Thanks for reading, Samantha. Story 5. Hey guys, I have a hitchhiking story that I can't shake from my memory. I was driving home from a camping trip in the mountains and stopped at a gas station to fill up. As I was getting back into my car, I noticed a man standing by the side of the road with his thumb out. He looked disheveled and had a duffel bag at his feet. I was feeling generous and offered him a ride. He climbed in the back seat and we introduced ourselves. His name was Jack and he told me he was traveling across the country to visit family. As we drove down the highway, Jack grew increasingly agitated and started fidgeting with the duffel bag. I tried to make conversation to distract him, but he seemed on edge and paranoid. Suddenly, Jack pulled a knife out of the bag and held it up to my neck. He demanded that I pull over and let him out of the car, or he would hurt me. I was terrified and did as he asked. As soon as Jack got out of the car, I locked the doors and called the police. They arrived quickly and apprehended him a few miles down the road. It turned out that Jack was a convicted felon and had escaped from a nearby prison. He had been on the run for weeks and was considered dangerous. I couldn't believe that I had almost been a victim of his crimes. It was a chilling reminder of the risks of picking up hitchhikers, and I vowed to never do it again. Stay safe out there. Story 6. I've got a hitchhiking story that still gives me goosebumps. A few years ago, I was driving through a remote part of the desert and saw a man on the side of the road with his thumb out. He looked scruffy and had a backpack with him. I pulled over and the man climbed into the passenger seat. He introduced himself as John and told me he was trying to get to the next town over. We made small talk and I learned that John had been traveling across the country for months, hitchhiking from place to place. As we drove, John grew increasingly talkative and started to tell me stories about his travel. But the stories started to take on a sinister tone, with descriptions of violent encounters and brushes with death. I started to feel uneasy and wanted to get him out of my car as soon as possible. But when we reached the next town, John refused to get out. He told me he had nowhere to go and begged me to let him stay with me for the night. I tried to politely decline, but John became angry and started to make threats. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. Finally, I came up with an excuse to leave and drove away as fast as I could. It wasn't until later that I realized how close I had come to danger. John's stories had been a facade for his true intention, and I had almost fallen victim to his trap. It was a scary reminder of the importance of being cautious when picking up strangers on the road. Story 7. Hey guys, I've got a hitchhiking story that still makes my skin crawl. A few years back, I was driving home late at night from a friend's house when I saw a woman on the side of the road with her thumb out. She looked tired and had a small suitcase with her. I felt bad for her and pulled over to offer a ride. She climbed into the passenger seat and introduced herself as Sarah. As we drove down the road, she seemed nervous and kept glancing out the window. I asked her if everything was okay, but she didn't want to talk about it. A few minutes later, a car pulled up behind us and started tailgating us aggressively. I tried to ignore it, but the driver wouldn't let up. Suddenly, Sarah screamed and pointed to the car behind us. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that the driver was holding a gun. I knew then that we were in serious trouble. I hit the gas and tried to outrun the car, but it kept coming closer. Just when I thought all was lost, a police car appeared out of nowhere and pulled the other car over. We were safe. The police told us that the driver had been wanted for several robberies in the area and was considered armed and dangerous. If it wasn't for Sarah's quick thinking, we might not have made it out alive. I'll never forget that night and how lucky we were to have escaped unharmed. It's a chilling reminder of the dangers of the road and why it's so important to be cautious when picking up strangers. Stay safe out there, Katie.